Hello everyone, I'm Wave, and today I'm going to be talking about one of my personal favorite slice of life visual novels, being Maitetsu Last Run. Let's get into it. Now Maitetsu is actually quite interesting in that the main premise of the story does have one goal, and then it splits into three different choices for which character you want to go with in order to accomplish said goal. This leads into the three main heroine routes, but then also this game has a lot of side routes, mostly for some of the side heroines, but then also in order to broaden the scope of the world and some of the characters and giving you more context, plus some additional after stories. Speaking of after stories, this game is also quite unique in that it does have fully fledged after stories for the three main heroines, similar in scope to Clannad After Story. Not necessarily in the same vibe as Clannad After Story, but providing additional plot, additional further development. One thing that I think about Maitetsu Last Run is I genuinely think it is one of the best visual novels in terms of how they portray familiarity and closeness to the characters, in that you, while reading through the story, you do bond at a level that it feels a little bit more complex than I would say in most other VNs that I have read. Partly, in fact, due to, I guess, the way that they handle the characters. Even, generic one-off villagers that you're going to be talking to only one time will actually have a smaller portrait with, an actual face attached to it in the bottom of the screen, along with proper voice acting. And I feel like it makes the world feel more lived in, but also just the way that you interact with characters. I don't know particularly if it is just the writing, but a lot of the characters do feel more tied together. Maitetsu does feel like it has a good grasp on being able to write friendships and family, to where you are able to just kind of, throughout its runtime, feel very familiar and at home with the cast of characters within its story. There is various points of drama and story beats that will escalate the tension throughout the story, but I think one of Maitetsu's greatest strengths is the fact that it's able to have very long stretches of just slice of life, and being able to have very everyday scenarios that feel not forced, and just really does further escalate the connection that you have to both the characters and the world, and also kind of making you feel more motivated towards the actual main goal of the story. I feel like this is also supported in the way of the game's general UI design. This game does have a bar that runs across the bottom of the screen that acts almost kind of like a bookmark, but also a general view on how far you are into any designated chapter or scene throughout the game. So even if you are in slice of life, you have a really good stopping point for when you have finished reading a certain portion. You don't have to feel that kind of weight isn't pushed onto the reader themselves on when they have to decide when they want to end their reading session. It's very easily visibly displayed within the game, but also each portion of said chapter is probably going to range you somewhere around 20 or so minutes. So you get a solid chunk of any one designated topic, but at the same time, it never feels stale and never feels like it's going on for far too long. I will say, graphically and also just attention to detail wise, Maitetsu is probably the most highest attention to detail visual novel that I have played thus far. Not even talking about how I've said with generic NPCs, but also just main cast characters and the way that they are animated. The music, as far as OST, is quite varied. I believe there are over 200 different arrangements when it comes to soundtrack within the game. And then also something that is very like not necessary at all, but does further kind of make the game feel bigger than what it is the fact that within like each main storyline there is a designated opening like cinematic or OP for each designated route, to where it, you know, makes it feel like this is all one bigger story. This is all one very like lengthy game that is split up into a multitude of very sizable stories. It's just something that I feel like there was a lot of love and care that was put into Maitetsu, and I genuinely do appreciate it. Maitetsu Last Run is a game that I very thoroughly enjoyed reading, and I do think that if you are somebody that enjoys that kind of slice of life, isn't afraid to kind of, you know, sit down for quite a while and just enjoy and indulge in a like world setting with a cast of characters that you'll have plenty of time to be able to bond with, I think you're going to enjoy Maitetsu Last Run. Do note that this is a kind of like weird release between, if you go to Steam, there are going to be two different, actually I think there's three, but there's going to be two different like main things you're going to run into. There is just base Maitetsu, which is English localized. That is only the first quote unquote half of the game. I do think it's not bad to read it. However, at the same time, regardless of the fact that, you know, it's not the full package, I think if you do want to get into Maitetsu, there's no reason not to get the full package, especially with how cheap you can get it at when it goes on sale. Obviously, it does mean that you are going to be reading it in Japanese rather than in English, but I felt like it was fairly like circumventable if you are someone that is not familiar or is not, you know, fluent in reading Japanese. I don't think it's that big of an issue, and I thoroughly enjoyed it reading it with Textractor anyways. Anyways, those have been my brief thoughts on Maitetsu Last Run. Thank you guys for watching. I've been Wave, and I will see you next time.